Greetings. Our Frederick Riddle here with another Christian news and views. And this is episode 105. And this is Monday, and so we're going to be looking at a lot of news out there, but the Ukraine talks are up again, so I'm going to talk about that. So here I'm going to go through the news, and then I'll give you my opinion. So officials from the United States and Russia are set to meet in Saudi Arabia today to discuss plans for a potential ceasefire to the war in Ukraine. This comes a day after U.S. negotiators held talks with a Ukrainian delegation, which Kiev described as productive and focused. Doesn't give you too much there. You don't know what that means. U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy said the separate discussions in Riyadh would bring about some real progress. Meanwhile, cross-border attacks continued overnight with a Russian airstrike injuring a 37-year-old man in Kiev, according to local authorities. Russia's defense ministry said it had intercepted a number of Ukrainian drones in several regions. They never tell about whether those drone attacks were successful. A lot of times they have been, but that's getting into opinion, so I'll hold off on that. Kiev's the regional governor, Mykola Salashuk, said the overnight strike also damaged several houses and the injured man had been taken to a hospital. An earlier attack in Kiev on Saturday killed 3 people, including a 5-year-old girl. Also on Sunday, a Russian strike in Zaporizhzhia injured a 54-year-old woman and damaged the residential buildings, the region's administration said on Telegram. In Russia, the Air Defense Ministry said it had intercepted and destroyed 28 Ukrainian drones overnight. Both Russia and Ukraine have continued fighting despite the ongoing talks, looking to secure an end to the 3-year war. The discussions mediated by the U.S. are part of Trump's plan to secure a fast ceasefire in Ukraine. His special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said he was hopeful that real progress towards at least a partial ceasefire would be made during the talks in an interview with Fox News. After Sunday evening's meeting between Kiev and Washington, Ukraine's defense minister Rustem Umerov said the talks were working towards securing a just and lasting peace for Ukraine and Europe. The discussion was productive and focused. We addressed key points, including energy, he said in a post on X. Looking ahead on Monday's meeting, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said there were difficult negotiations ahead. We are only at the beginning of this path, he told Russian TV, or Russian state TV. And so, Special Envoy Witkoff had an interview with Tucker Carlson, and he gave details of how Trump wanted to cooperate with Russia after relations had been normalized. And he said this: "Who doesn't want to have a world where Russia and the U.S. are doing collaboratively good things together, thinking about how to integrate their energy policies in the Arctic, share sea lanes, or lines rather, maybe send LNG gas into Europe together, maybe collaborate on AI together." And so I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm going to start with that last one. Who doesn't want to have a world where Russia and the U.S. are doing collaboratively good things together? Here's my opinion on that. First of all, you can count me as one who does not want a world where Russia and the U.S. are doing anything collaboratively. You say, well, why? That sounds like a pretty good idea. To get a world like that, do you realize what that would need for us to do? There's at least three things. First of all, and foremost, and the most uh, disastrous thing I can think of, is that our nation would have to leave, make that all caps all the way across, leave our Christian values. Because the Russian government has none, and the Russian government, not, they've shown no inclination to back away from their convictions, which are anything but Christian, whereas our country has been slowly going away from Christian values over the decades. So, yeah, that would mean that we would have to leave our Christian values behind. Number two, it would mean abandoning any semblance of being a country that the rest of the world can trust. Most of the world trusts us as far as on international affairs. We make an agreement. We have always in the past. We've kept to our agreements. We've supported people. We've sent food. We've helped people in times of trouble, like tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, you name it. And we've been there to help them. Will they be able to trust us in the future? We might still continue to help them. But that's not the point. The point is that when we tell people and even make treaties and saying, hey, we got your back, how much confidence do they going to have when we don't even have the back of Ukraine, which historically speaking, the United States has supported? So that is something that is one of the things that would probably end up happening. Number three, it would mean cooperating with a government that is bent on restoring the Soviet Union in essence, if not in fact. And to do this, no matter how many people are killed. And you might dispute this idea, but it's been pretty pervasive across all the news media that I've ever looked at, that Putin wants to restore the glory days, if you will, of the Soviet Union. Not necessarily the government of the Soviet Union. He kind of likes the one he's got, where he's a dictator. And the Soviet Union was run by the party rather than an individual. They had individuals up at the top, but if they stepped out of line, they got removed. But Putin has a lot of power, and I think he likes it. And so, but the idea of having the land area that once involved the Soviet Union, Russia has taken a stand that, well, whatever belonged to the Soviet Union belongs to Russia, and the Ukraine at one time was under the Soviet Union. And so that's part of that. In the article that I was following, one of the things they said, or actually Mr. Witkoff, I think, is the one that said this, was that the idea of following, he mentioned Winston Churchill. He doesn't even measure up to Winston Churchill, but the Winston Churchill stood firm for his government, and he promised, was it blood, sweat, and tears. And that's exactly what happened during World War II. It's true that NATO didn't exist then, but the countries that formed NATO did, and there were at least loose agreements between the different nations. The United States may not have had any at that point, but that's because at one time we kind of leaned to the pessimistic, to the being peaceful. Just think about America first, and I'm in favor of America first as far as products go and things like that. But we also live in a world where we have to cooperate, and we got to be very careful who we name as our friends and our enemies. Mr. Witkoff is the one who is naive, in my opinion. Putin is supposed to have. Witkoff claimed that Putin prayed for Trump after the assassination. Who did he pray to? The man's not a Christian. And so he prayed to, at the best, a false god. And I personally think that if he prayed to anything or anyone, he probably prayed to the devil himself. Uh, that's my opinion. I'm entitled to it, and I see no reason to change that. He certainly did not pray to God, and if he had, it wouldn't have gone beyond the ceiling of his office. So after in my opinion, he's just a useful tool of Satan, if not one of his followers. He himself is, in my opinion, evil, believes killing children, like that 5-year-old girl, is okay, believes raping women is okay, believes outright murder is okay, as long as he gets what he wants. Is that what we want to be affiliated with? I don't think so. I understand the idea of bringing them in and so they can sit at the table and you can look across the table into one another's eyes. I understand that. And so I understand what Trump is trying to do there is to raise them up to the point where they can be as equals. But the truth of the matter is they will never be, as long as Putin is in charge anyhow, never be equals, morally speaking. He is, and many countries have labeled him a war criminal. And in my opinion, that's exactly what he is, a war criminal. So I have no confidence in Putin. And as far as the Russian people are concerned, individually, they're probably pretty good people, at least on a human standpoint. And there are Christians in Russia, but they're underground. But the thing is that the government itself is corrupt, and you can't trust it from top to down. As for the talks, I welcome them. But if our government thinks it can solve this war all by itself, it has a reality check coming. An agreement without NATO, which will outlast Trump's presidency. He only is going to be president for less than 4 years. And Ukraine. Ukraine is the one who's under attack. So if you don't have NATO and you don't have Ukraine involved in this fully, then there's no real agreement. The Trump presidency could impose certain things upon Ukraine. I am not sure how much he could impose upon NATO anymore, but upon Ukraine he can bring a lot of pressure on Ukraine. But that only is as long as he is the president. And after him, all things are on the table. We have no idea who's going to take his place, whether it's even going to be a Republican or not. It might be. Right now, it looks like it would be. But politics changed and changed rapidly. Just look at the Republican Party. It was in tatters after 2020. And now it's the dominant party. So the turnarounds can happen real fast. So that is something that they have to face. And by the way, I will say this, they are facing, at least to what seems to be, they are having talks with their NATO allies, and they are having talks with Ukraine. We don't know what the substance of those talks are, but they are having talks. And so I'm sure that Ukraine especially, and NATO also, would not be having the talks if they were not seeing those talks bearing some kind of fruit. So that's a good, promising thing, in which I'm hoping will continue and will play a major role in how this peace agreement eventually comes around. I personally continue to have a great deal of confidence in President Trump's ability to bring about a temporary peace. But the kind of peace they are talking about is contrary to what we see in the Bible, especially the book of Revelation. I've said this before, the United States will either disappear or be rendered unable to influence world powers. And according to the book of Revelation, Russia will still be a world power, maybe even more so than they are now. So we, politicians don't care what the Bible says, but you and I as Christians should. And we need to interpret things in the light of the Word of God. So Trump's desire for peace is commendable. But the only way a lasting peace can be achieved must be done according to God's will. And we know God's will about the future is expressed in the Holy Scriptures. They ignore the Holy Scriptures and they'll get a temporary peace. No one's ever, that I know of, has ever said that that's not possible. It's sometimes doubtful, but that's almost like a circumstance. The circumstances can be so bad you say, oh, it can't happen, but the circumstances can change. Right now, the Ukraine is having difficulty holding on to Russian land, which they don't want anyhow. They only did it for the political advantage, and so they're losing that advantage. But they are now getting weapons and so forth back, and that can change even that situation. Depends upon where Ukraine employs them and how they do it. And so the thing is, a temporary peace is achievable, and I do pray that Trump will be successful in that, and he will. I believe that Trump he loves the United States. He's not one of these politicians who has an agenda. Um, Trump doesn't need the money. Trump doesn't need even the publicity. He gets plenty of publicity, good and bad. But the thing is, he loves America, and he wants to see. He wants to be. I've read where they say he wants to be known as a peace president. He's got that's commendable, but he's got to be understand history. We've had people in office before who wanted to be known as peace presidents, and they tried to do it through shortcuts and some other ways, and they ended up failing. So I think, though, that if anybody can pull this off as far as a temporary peace is concerned, I think that Trump can do so. He'll find a way, and he knows how to influence other people. What do you call it? The art of negotiation. So I have confidence in him, but I have little to no confidence in whoever's coming after him because I don't know who it is. I don't know their record. I don't know, are they a Christian? If they're not a Christian, so then all you have is to go by what they have done. And unfortunately, in the world we live in today, a person can do a lot of things to get elected, and then once they have that job, they turn around and do something entirely contrary. We've seen that in our history. And so I would, anybody coming after Trump, we just don't know who that would be. And so that's something we have to watch. And I know I've said this so many times, we have to stand back and just watch and see how things play, because you and I don't have a lot of say in this. We can voice our opinion, and we can voice our opinion at the polls, stuff like that. But as far as negotiations, like what's going on right now, we have to have some kind of confidence in our government to stand firm on principles that the United States, in some cases, we're the first ones to actually do them, to promote them, and they're principles. And they're good principles. So we have to just wait and see how that comes about. I'm going to still wait and trust Trump on this. But I don't trust Putin, not even a little bit. And so we'll just see how that goes. That's it for today. I wanted to spend some time on this one and some degree of time, because I think it's very important for us to be supportive of President Trump and his administration. And I am supportive of that. They do, and some things are hard to do. The reason some of the things that the Trump administration does, not just in the Ukraine war, but in the DOGE, D-O-G-E, and other areas, they're hard and seem harsh, but you got to remember something. We have had both Republican and Democratic administrations in the past that allowed, instead of solving these situations that we are now trying to put down, and they actually, what they did basically is a old-fashioned political idea of kicking the bucket down the road, and that's what they did. Well, we don't want to do anything like that, um, and so they kick it down the road. Social Security is a big one. Now they have to be very careful how they do that one. But the thing is, Social Security has become a political, um, not only a hotbed, but it's also a political um, area where our government, representatives and senators, when they want funds to help finance some of their projects, it's my understanding, and it's been credible people who have said this in the past, they dip in to the Social Security fund. Now, I don't believe that the Social Security is a uh, try to think what they call it. It's not. It's not something that they're given to us. They require us by law to pay in. We pay in half of the Social Security, and so we're paying it in. A forced savings. And when it gets to them, they now they look at it. The government tends to look at it and they say, okay, this is something that it's just something that we give them, something that we can take away. We can do whatever we want with it. That's not really like the law was initially set up. The idea behind it was a forced savings, and it was. I don't think that the people who did it had any anticipation of it being a source of income for government projects. But what they do, and again, this is based on information over the years that I've read and come across, is that they dip into the funds and they don't just take it, they give their IOU. And it's my understanding there are billions of dollars worth of IOUs floating around there. Worthless, because they're never going to be paid back. That renders them worthless. Now they'll say, oh yeah, we're going to pay them back. When? I mean, this started in the early 1900s. And here we are in 2025. They haven't paid any of that back. So that's something we need to understand and focus on. And so, so that's one of the things about people say, well, they can't find fraud. What do you call that? IOUs that are absolutely worthless. Isn't that fraud? I would call it fraud. And people there are people on Social Security who aren't even alive. Some of them were made up to begin with. And so I've read the headlines of some of these stories. I haven't really read their stories as to how they justify it. But some of them say, well, they haven't been able to prove fraud. Well, it sounds like they have, to me anyhow. But that's just one area. There's all over the government, and we have necessary things, steps, just to save our economic system, just to save our government, just to save our country from going down under and becoming a third world country. And I don't know if they can do it or not. You look at Book of Revelation, you don't see the United States. And what causes that, we don't know. So, but the blame don't belong on the Trump administration. They're trying to right the ship. I'm an old Navy guy, so I'll think of the ship as sinking. And they're trying to plug the leaks. But there are a lot of leaks. And these are not just caused by Democrats. They're caused under Republican and Democratic administrations over decades. And that is something that, if I was in the party, any one of those parties, either one of them, I wouldn't be proud of that. But that's history. That's water under the bridge. There's nothing we can do about it. except try to correct it. Try to plug those holes. And we don't want to be like the Titanic and go under. Uh, so anyhow, that's it for today. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. And if you do like this episode, I would encourage you to, right down below here, you subscribe to this channel, which is TR Independent Books. By subscribing, you not only ensure that you have access to both my podcasts, this one here, Christian News and Views, and the other one is called Becoming a Published Author is Fun, and that's where I give out free information. If you want to be a published author, you can use that information now to help you along the way. And you won't pay me a cent. You may pay others for different things that you might want to do, but that information comes to you free. And there's another thing that you do. You encourage me. So when you encourage me, that encourages me to encourage you. And to encourage you, that means I do all in my power to create episodes that will inform you, that will encourage you, and will inspire you. Whether you want to be an author or whether you're just trying to take the news and understand it from a Christian viewpoint. That's my viewpoint, and I hope that you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode.